Yo, Miami Dolphins fans, the new era of the Miami Dolphins is kicking off with Mike McDaniel, who was signed to a 4-year deal on Sunday. Whatever your thoughts are of what the previous regime was, or what Ross and Greer are, or what the possibilities, Mike McDaniel is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins in the legacy of Don Shula. For me, the Miami Dolphins were the coaches, the staff, the players, the guys, the team presidents and the owners and the GMs. I don't really consider them the same level. So to me, my support, my passion, my fandom is about good Miami Dolphins coaches and players, and I support them. So I'm very excited about Mike McDaniel, but I've spoken in the past who I used to be. I was kind of like a cold pragmatist, and some good people and turned me to thinking in a different way. I became an idealist. And now today, at 50 years old, I'm somewhere in between. So I'm going to tell you, there's definitely hope here, but there's also some concerns. And we just got to let things play out. We've got to believe that there is hope, but we also have to be realistic about what went on in the past, what we have, and what the flaws and issues could be. Some fans, they just say, we're going nowhere. Look what we've done for the past 20 blah, blah, blah years. Nothing's going anywhere. There's nothing. Then there's all those saying, everything's great. It's going to be great no matter what happens. No matter what happens, it's awesome. You got to root for your guy. And that's not me. I play the middle of the road. And I think there's a little bit of both going on here. But again, we got to let it play out. I am excited about Mike McDaniel. I did want Jim Harbaugh the most, though. That was my number one guy. Now, I liked him the most because I don't like Ross. I don't like Greer. And I think Harbaugh would have came in and at least either reduced Greer or kept him in check and really made wholesale changes on a football level. And he would have been able to do the same with Ross to keep him in check. And it would have been a football guy running the show, and I liked that, and I wanted that. But he didn't even come here. Didn't even interview. And I don't think it's really a knock on Ross. As much as I don't like Ross, trust me, I'm not trying to be positive Ross in any way, but I don't think it's a knock on him. I don't think it's because he didn't want to get a guy from Michigan. I personally think he knew Jim wouldn't come here, and he just put that excuse out there so he didn't look like, he was getting snubbed by Jim. I think Jim wanted to stay in the North area. He built roots there with Michigan, and Vikings was the only spot he really interviewed at and wanted. So I don't put it as a knock as the Dolphins or Ross or Greer in any way. What I do put a knock in is Jim Caldwell. I wanted him to come here. To me, he's like Brian Flores, but like marinated and matured. He's got that ferocity, but the charisma, the experience, the intelligence. He's really the full package. And he worked here, so we had connections. And not even getting an interview is bothersome. I think that he developed quarterbacks. He would have been great for Tua. He had veteran experience, been to Super Bowls as a coordinator. To me, he was the best option. Now, some people, I understand their point. They'll say he's 63 years old. He took a year off because of health issues. They were afraid to deal with that. My retort to that is, we drafted Tua with a blown out hip. I think that a coach that took a year off after working at Detroit, for health reasons, I think that's, I don't think that's that big a deal, but I understand that point of view. But there's no excuse for Doug Peterson, not coming here and at least interviewing. I understand that he would go to the Jaguars and he'd want to work with Lawrence, and there was a lot, but we didn't get an interview. And that is bothersome. But of all the candidates on that second tier below those three guys, to me, Mike McDaniel is the guy that I wanted the most. He offers the most hope, and I really like the direction. So at least if I didn't get those first three, he's my fourth choice. I'm happy with that. But we'll go over the pros and cons. Now, a concern I have, and I've been talking about, is Ross and Greer. I've been saying it for quite some time. And I wonder, not saying it is, I wonder if these veteran coaches with their connections and knowledge of the game just really didn't want to come here because of the circus atmosphere and because they didn't want to be involved with it. So this is why they didn't even interview. Or, as some people are reporting, it's because Ross really likes the young guys that he can mold and control and the business type model. I kind of think it's a little mixture of both. Because if you look at Ross, he came in with Sparano, hard-nosed football guy. Yeah, he wanted to move off him for Harbaugh, a hard-nosed football guy. And so you say he's not totally afraid of that. And, he said he was intimidated by Parcells. So he did go for Harbaugh, and you'd figure, okay, well, maybe he's not totally adverse to the football guy. But then he picked Joe Philbin. And then Joe Philbin, Queasy flopped. And Todd Bowles, a hard-nosed football guy, and he was the interim coach, and we didn't want him here. Then we went with Gase, who's kind of like that flim-flam kind of guy. He looks like he's like a chihuahua. He fear bites, but he's really kind of like a Philbin. And then we had Campbell, who's interim coach, and he's a hard-nosed football guy, and we didn't want any part of him. And then Ross said he stepped out of the coaching process, and he gave it over to Greer. And Greer chose Flores, and you can see how that went. However you would think it went, it didn't go well. And now we're back into the kind of Philbin-esque, Gase-esque type nature. But now it's not a knock, because to me, Mike McDaniel is way smarter than those two guys. And I believe there's more ferocity to his nature, even though he's a slight and small guy. And he's witty. And Gase was kind of witty, but it was like that nasty, like the nasty sarcasm. To me, McDaniel's got legitimate wit, a personable wit. So if you're going to take a slight guy, small guy, and he's brilliant with wit, that can be very endearing to the media. It can be very endearing to the players. And there's a chance that this guy could be smart and having like avant-garde charisma. That's not prototypical of the hard-nosed football coach. So I do like that. But he lacks experience, which is okay. And that smallish frame, if things start going south, sometimes the brilliance and the wit just doesn't cut it. You need to have that. It's battle. You need that hard personality sometimes just to drive through the negativity. Now, if he can come out of the gate hot and he can get these players to succeed and ride that positive nature, that positive momentum, that nature can accentuate all things. So this is going to kind of, for me, kind of could go either way. But again, McDaniel is the guy I really wanted the most. Now, he was a run coordinator, offensive coordinator, run coordinator in 2020, offensive coordinator in 2021. He sat in a booth, kind of like oversaw things, but he wasn't calling. And in one way, this is a good thing because a head coach, unless they're ultra brilliant like Sean Payton, they shouldn't be calling. They're here to make sure all the balls are going through the air and none of them are dropping, to coordinate the soldiers and get them to do the smaller stuff and look at the macro picture. So for him to be up in that booth and be a coordinator in that sense, this suits his head coaching responsibilities perfectly. So I'm not too concerned if he can get a guy to call the plays. We don't know if he's calling the plays, he's going to get a guy to call the plays. He might just be the macro view guy. And that's what I would hope he does. But being up in a booth is not the same as being on the field and having to call and make decisions under fire. And Flores, he wasn't even a coordinator. Dude, he made all the calls in the regular season, in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl for the Patriots. That tunes you up and trains you for the heat of the NFL to make decisions in seconds. We got to make a big decision. It trains you. So I think there's going to be a growth curve, a little maybe more growth curve than with Flores because of this. Although if he's as brilliant as he says, he can mitigate some of those by being smart and having the right people around him. So I'm kind of half and half with his resume as far as is this a positive or negative. I think it can go either way. I do love the offense. I do love the run-centric style that he brings. I think it's perfect for Tua. If everybody, I don't care if you want to replace Tua down the road, you still want him to be well so we can get some trade value from him if you move him on. And if you love him, you want to see him succeed. However you slice it, I've said all year that the run game is critical for Tua. It's critical for everything. You saw the teams that are winning all had run games, potent run games. And so the fact that he believes in the run game, he was a run game coordinator. His mindset is we have to run the football, not just be like a run heavy team, but this is a critical aspect, much like Shane Gailey, who I was very, very much a supporter of. And they're both Shane Gailey. You have to understand, the Shanahan system, which McDaniel was raised under, Gailey was the guy who's developing that offense through the 90s with that zone stretch run game with the cut blocks. It was Gailey. Gailey was a run-centric offensive coordinator, and this is critical. You saw how well he did in 2020 for Miami Dolphins because he understood balance. He understood the macro view of making play calls with the run game and run attempts, all this other stuff. And I think McDaniel is going to perfectly understand this. But, head coaches, they're made up. Their success comes from their staff and the talent around them. Can he get the staff? We have to see about that. And can he get the talent around him? Most notably, the offensive line. In the NFL, the offensive line makes the world go round. If you don't have an offensive line, you will struggle. I don't care what skills you have, quarterback, or even a defense, because they'll get gassed if you're not running the football. The offensive line sets the table for everything. And my concern is Chris Grier has proven since 2007 to struggle developing an offensive line. That can change. We got money. You can go get free agents. Mike McDaniel might understand offensive linemen better than Grier or even Flores and be able to get that talent in here. Will they come? Will free agents come based on all this scandal and possible fallout and all stuff? We don't know. But they've got to get this offensive line together because McDaniel had Jimmy G. And say what you want about Jimmy G. He was able to go to the offensive line, go to the line of scrimmage, make the calls, make the adjustments. He has a pretty decent arm at times, a little erratic on occasion. And he was able to make things happen as a general. But he had this unbelievable offensive line. Trent Williams is going to the Hall of Fame like year one. Once he's eligible, he's going in. Right now, he's playing at like 33 or 34. He's probably the top one or two tackles in the league. And the rest of the offensive line is really, really good. Really, really good. The difference between the earth to the moon compared to the Dolphins' offensive line. So he had Jimmy G, he had the offensive line, and he had a world-class defense, better than our defense here. Because our defense is based on putting players in the right position at the right times and confusion and masking and movement. And that takes a guy to put them there, and it's kind of like finicky. They had a front that was we ran pretty much vanilla zones and stuff like that. Wrinkles, obviously. But that front four was able to get after them. So that supported his style of game where you can run the football and maybe not get points here and there, but you got a defense that's going to keep it close. He's coming here. He's not really going to have all those tools. So can they get him the offensive line? Can they put talent around him? Can he get the staff? That's going to determine everything, And then once that happens, well, what is he going to do if that were the case? Now, remember, he runs a zone stretch system. It's not totally zone stretch. It's zone, they get the offensive lineman moving down the line of scrimmage, and then the running back, he either finds a hole, play side, or he makes a one cut back against the grain and he sees something gets opened up. This all again comes from Gailey when he used to zone stretch and cut the guy, and you see those giant holes for Terrell Davis they run through. I am not a big fan of zone stretch being the staple of an offensive line. I mean, if the offensive line is elite, Okay. But it's very difficult to get that. And I more prefer inside zone and man with a little sprinkling of zone stretch. We ran a lot of inside zone and zone stretch, some zone stretch. But it would seem like there's going to be either like a balance between those two or a heavy to the zone stretch. And this could be a good thing with guys like Jackson and Eichenberg and Dieter, who can use their agility to get out there and to make those blocks. It could develop those guys. But then there's incongruency in the parts because Robert Hunt's your best offensive lineman. And he's not ultra nimble. I think he can do well in the zone stretch, but his game more favors man and zone blocking. So this critical offensive line, it could see a big boost, but it's going to take some injection of talent, and it's going to take a very smart guy to make all these pieces work because they don't really fit well together. So we got to wait and see what that happens. So there's good and bad in that as well. But the run game, to me, is critical for Tua. It's just critical. To me, it was the most critical piece. I talked about how this defense, all through the season, I talked about we need to run the football. Gailey understood this. That's why we had like the 16th most attempts in 2020. Rushing attempts creates balance on the offense, makes passing game easier, and it provides rest for the defense. And I'm really excited because McDaniel was raised up in the Shanahan system, again, like I said, with Gailey being a big influence of that. And so I think he understands this very, very good. I'm excited about that. But for Tua, if you go back and watch him in college, he had a very good run game. And that quick release and that mobility is going to help him on play actions where teams really respect the play action. Not like, oh, we have to respect it because, well, that's our job. And, we just kind of like token respect. But we really got to respect it. That play action boot, not to get him running and making plays on his legs, but to get the receivers coming off blocks and going counter to the motion of the defense can create huge plays where he can connect with Waddle, who I think will benefit heavily from the run game, will benefit heavily from play action. Because you remember these defenses, we ran 12 personnel all the time. That means 2 tight ends to protect this offensive line because they could not block on their own. When you got 2 tight ends, even with Gesicki, you crunch the zones up. You bring everybody up because you don't fear the deep. And that makes everything harder. It makes everything harder. But if you can run 3 wides, you can get some play action out of that. And you get play action even when you bring your 12 personnel in. This is going to create space. And it's going to make the defense respect the offense. And it's going to provide opportunities for Tua. And when these opportunities come, if he takes them, this will be a way to see that, okay, we can go forward with this guy. And if not, then we can say, hey, we move forward without him or move forward until we can replace him. But again, Waddle, we spent big picks on him. This will be a big benefit to him as well. Now, I talked a little bit about the experience, presence, and brains and funny and all this other stuff. But he's going to make mistakes in the first 2 years. People were getting down on Flores, and rightly so. To me, I think the Raiders game really wasn't on him. I think the Jaguars game was definitely on him. That was a bad situation for him. But we have to remember, every year, no matter what coach, the best coach in the league, look at Vrabel. He should have gone instead of 2 points, should have kicked the extra point. Look at Andy Reid. He should have kicked the field goal instead of trying to go for it with 5 seconds left. You could lambaste these great coaches based on this one moment. So we got to, if you are impatient with Flores or getting on him, this guy's going to make big mistakes in the first 2 years. But that's okay. We got to be patient. Remember, we have effect. We can help this organization out. We can help the coaches out by being positive until we shouldn't. So you're going to have to be patient with this guy. There's no way about it. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. So expect some miscues. And you'll say, well, look at McVay. He's that same kind of guy, semi-slight, a bookwormy type kind of guy. And look at sex. He had so much talent. So much talent. As soon as he came to the team, there's just so much talent. We cannot expect the same trajectory. Patience is going to be key. Not 10 years down the line, but we've got to evaluate fairly. I've always said that. You've got to evaluate fairly. The D staff, it's said he's not being forced to keep them, but to me, that's the first big decision of how I'm going to grade McDaniel. At the very least, if he's smart, he'll keep the defensive staff intact so he can focus on the offense, and he can keep these defensive players developing, and then maybe in year 2, he can get rid of some staff and maybe even change the scheme if he wants. But I think it would be foolish for him to remove the staff, take staff out, and change the scheme, because he's going to need momentum. The fans need some momentum. The team needs some momentum. And taking that variable out of adding a whole new framework around the defense, I think, is going to be a big decision. If he just keeps things the way they are, I'm going to see some wisdom in that. So that's my first big critique of McDaniel. So it is what it is. You know my standpoint. And I'm going to do my last big podcast on the last regime to show you something very critical. I'm going to use quotes and videotape. It's not going to be sources, in my opinion. And it's going to lead up to a very critical point of the insertion of Tua to show you how Ross and Greer clearly interfered. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but I'd say it's around 95% fact that they came in and altered heavily with Brian. And I'm going to show you the film, and you'll see all the interviews and everything. You're like, oh, I didn't know that. I forgot about that. And all put together, and you're like, oh, man, they came in and they basically forced into drove out Gailey. I'm going to show it to you. But I'm hoping that at least some good can come out of the Flores case, where maybe they'll back off and let this guy do his thing. If they don't interfere, that's going to be a good thing. If he can find his staff, his talent, they could bring talent around him. But everything is what it is. We're just going to have to be patient. And it's not easy for some. For some, it's very easy. They were very happy to move off Flores. I can understand some of that. But I think as the context tightens and the facts come out, I think people might change their mind. We also have to remember that he's coming into a harder situation than many Finn fans might want to believe. Allen is ultra elite Josh Allen. They have a great defense. They've got a very experienced coach. The removal of Dable, to me, is going to make them better. I spoke from the first beginning preseason of what they needed to do. And I could show you through the framework of the season how it was very clear. And Dable is just hard-headed. And I think they're going to be on a better track offensively this year than last year. And they're going to lose some players a little bit, but they're going to get some players back through health, and they're going to add some more talent. It's going to be a very, very tough team to get past. Very tough team. And then you got Belichick. I mean, he's a good coach, great coach. And the loss of McDaniels. That's how come I keep saying McDaniels instead of McDaniel. He's with the Raiders now, and that's going to be a hit. But that's a tough team. That's your number 2 team. And then the Jets, they got all these draft picks. They're going to load up on defense, and they could end up being a tough team as well. So you've got a very tough team, a pretty tough team with a legend of head coach, another team on the rise, and McDaniel is going to have to navigate his way through that. Again, this is going to say, Finn fans, we need to be practical and patient and hopeful. But of all of them, patient is going to be the key. It could be an ugly year next year. That's all right. We got 2 picks in 2023. Maybe the Flores stuff will come out and he's the bad guy or whatever, and everything will be rosy in 2023. But next year is got to just say it's a mulligan. And see how things pan out and evaluate it. But above all, we got to support our team. There's a new guy to the franchise. Got to believe. And if you don't, just let it play out. Be hopeful, because there is a lot of good. Even, let's say, if you're like me and you believe Ross is going to get screwed and get pulled out along with Greer, if McDaniel is doing a great job, whoever takes over is going to keep him. and build around him again. So however you slice it, even if, like for me, I wanted Flores to stay, he ain't coming back. McDaniel's our guy. If he does well, he can be the foundation for the future. If Ross is the good guy and Greer's the good guy, or if not. This is our team. What are you going to do? Just got to hope and believe. So anyway, Fin fans, it's Curtis saying thank you for staying to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe. Comments mean the most. You can see I love comments. To me, it's my favorite part of the job. I'm a writer by trade. I love talking. I learn so much. You know, I really like that, hearing from you. So whatever you got to say, I put them in podcasts. I change my stances. I converse. I really appreciate the comments. Subscribes and likes help us with the Google overlords. And it makes my sponsor feel very good up there. So please subscribe and like. That keeps us in business. Didn't really think I was going to like doing this. I kind of found my way into it, fell into it, and I'm really enjoying it. So Google Overlords, happy Google Overlords means that I get to stay here for another season. So anyway, thank you for staying to the end. This is Curtis saying be well. Gotta believe. Gotta believe. In the darkest times, you still gotta believe. Go Fins. Bookies can earn hundreds to thousands of dollars from booking action with aceperhead.com.